welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name's Rudy, Mireles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. A little later in the program, our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz is going to be joining us for a few different topics, including the building of a new data center over on his side of the border, specifically in the New Mexico area. So we're going to learn more about that and how it could have an economic impact in his neck of the woods. But first, as always, we're going to take a look at what's trending across the border, starting in Portland, where federal agents shot and wounded 2 people in a vehicle outside a hospital in Portland, Oregon last night. Now, this is happening just a day after an officer shot and killed a woman in Minneapolis. The shooting drew hundreds of protesters to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement building last night. Oregon's Attorney General vowed to investigate whether any federal officer acted outside the scope of their lawful authority and refer criminal charges to the prosecutor's office if warranted. Department of Homeland Security officials identified the driver and passenger as both being from Venezuela. They claimed that the pair entered the U.S. illegally in 2022 and 2023, respectively. DHS said the passenger is tied to Tren de Aragua prostitution ring that was involved in a recent shooting in the city. Moving on to the latest now on the shooting in Minneapolis earlier this week that left a 37-year-old mother of 3 dead. Lawmakers are calling for a thorough, objective, and impartial investigation of the fatal shooting after the FBI said it would not share information with Minneapolis police. Our News Nation's Brooke Schaefer has more.
Tensions are still incredibly high across Minneapolis. Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz says he's now authorized the National Guard to be staged and ready. As overnight, we saw more protests throughout the city, hundreds of people marching in the cold rain with signs telling ICE to get out. Protesters in Minneapolis angry over this week's deadly shooting and the immigration crackdown in Minnesota. Protesters are also calling on that ICE agent who shot and killed 37-year-old Renee Good to be arrested. We saw that same frustration all day yesterday outside a federal building, where at times that tension boiled into clashes. We saw arrests, pepper spray, and tear gas. Still, protesters say they're not leaving until ICE does.
We shouldn't have to be out here protesting over the death over a woman a mother of children. That it's so wrong. Please get out, leave us alone.
It was disgusting the way that ICE just murdered her. It was a murder. I know I've seen some people trying to frame it, Donald Trump, a certain way, but we're gonna call it what it is. It was a murder.
Despite calls for ICE to leave, DHS says they are not slowing down and are defending that agent still, saying he acted in self-defense. The FBI is still investigating, but today some Democratic leaders in Minnesota say they're concerned this won't be a fair investigation after news the FBI will not be working jointly with state investigators. In Minneapolis, Brooke Schaefer, News Nation.
Now, the agent who fatally shot Renee Good in Minneapolis was an Iraq war veteran who has served for nearly 2 decades in the Border Patrol and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Court documents obtained by the Associated Press show Jonathan Ross, that's the agent in question, was injured last summer when he was dragged by a suspect's moving vehicle. Federal border agents are pulling out of a Louisiana immigration crackdown, and they are now heading to Minneapolis. Agents have been in Louisiana since December as part of the so-called Operation Catahoula Crunch and had been expected to stay there into February. The Trump administration has begun surging thousands of federal officers to Minnesota under a sweeping new crackdown that is tied in part to allegations of fraud involving Somali residents. The Department of Homeland Security would not say Friday whether the Louisiana operation was ending in order to send officers to Minnesota. Moving now to the other side of the border in Mexico, where several people are in police custody in the city of Juarez, accused of shooting at 3 Chihuahua State police officers at a gas station on Thursday. One officer was killed and the other 2 were injured. Officer Edgar David Quesada Villa worked as a drone operator. He was apparently engaged in a surveillance mission in a neighborhood. Investigators say the officers were attacked when they took a break to gas up their vehicle. Quesada died at the scene, and the two others were taken to hospitals with injuries that were not considered life-threatening. Again, 7 people are now in custody. Also happening, gunmen in eastern Mexico killed a journalist on Thursday, marking the latest murder in one of the world's most dangerous countries for the press. The reporter, Carlos Castro, covered crime in Veracruz. Our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, has more on this story now and the danger that journalists in Mexico face. How are you doing today, Julian?
Really good to be back on the show. Yeah, let me tell you that every time that we hear of a story of a journalist being killed in Mexico, the news really hits close to home. Over here, whenever we cover, especially the police beat, it means covering drug trafficking. And there's a certain amount of danger every time you step over there and you start asking questions about crime, who did this, who ordered this. And I can understand the situation that many of my colleagues down there are facing. I have some statistics here from various press organizations that show that up to 175 journalists have been killed in Mexico this century, since the year 2000. And the reasons are various. Primarily it has to do with their job and also the places where they go. The journalist that was killed recently, his name is Carlos Castro, and Castro. And I've checked his coverage, his news blog. He was a prolific writer. The last full day on the job, he filed 25 postings having to do with innocuous stuff, such as covering the inauguration of a new city park, to several arrests in which he showed the faces of people being arrested on the street for charges ranging from selling drugs to committing fraud to being posing a danger to other people. So it's understandable the risk that Mexican journalists run. I think I've shared with the group in previous occasions that this has hit close to home here in the El Paso Juarez area. I've shared that 2 of my collaborators, 2 members of my team, 2 freelance photographers, at various times have been faced this type of threats and violence, including an abduction in which they're out there shooting the border wall, shooting pictures of the border wall, or out and about in the neighborhoods where crimes have been committed, and they're just picked up by random criminals. They've had to explain at the risk of their lives, hey, we're not here to document your activities, we're just shooting the news event. Luckily, nothing has happened, but this illustrates the very real danger that Mexican journalists face down there just doing their job.
You know, one of the things when I started working down here on the border that I would hear from folks is don't go digging too deep into stories, because you never know who that person you're covering may be connected to on the other side of the border. And luckily, I've never had any concerns myself, but you've been covering a massive stretch of the border for a very, very long time, and you've been doing it very, very well. Have you ever had any personal concerns about your own safety doing your job?
Yeah, obviously, I've received threats at various times, remote threats, luckily, not in person, and I've reported them both to my employer as well as to my colleagues, just to give them a heads up. Hey, this might be coming down. So yeah, there's always danger in what you do. And let me tell you something else, and it has to do with what Carlos, the deceased journalist, was doing. Sometimes people get upset just because you show their faces. And yes, to answer your question, I've interviewed numerous veteran journalists in Mexico, and they tell me they go by that standard. Just go down there, don't dig too deep, do your job and get out. And this very young journalist, obviously, he was exercising his rights as a journalist, documenting arrests and all that. Also, let me tell you that 2 years ago, in 2024, yeah, Carlos received specific threats. And in fact, he sought the protection of the Mexican federal government, and he got it. However, he felt this was not enough, so he left the state. He fled. He only recently came back. Reports vary, but I believe he came back in December and started doing his job again. So there's a possibility that whoever threatened him back in 2024, a threat so serious that he had to flee the state, may have come back and gotten back to him.
And one of I think the biggest concerns is the reach that some of these bad guys really have so deep. I mean, we see it all the time when we, hear from federal law enforcement agents, for example, that talk about their past and some of their work and how, so many people on both sides of the border are so connected. So, it really does, bring up that sense of, almost danger doing what we do, regardless of which side of the Rio Grande you're on.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you, Rudy, that there's two faces to that. Yeah, some of the drug cartels, some of the criminal organizations have as good or better intelligence apparatus as the Mexican government. The other is the unpredictability of covering crime just on the street, because an ordinary person may get really upset if you photograph him being arrested, even if it was just for like a petty theft. You don't know how that person's going to react, and really, you have no protection. I mean, the fact that there's so much impunity and that there's not so to speak, a police officer in every corner means that you're pretty much on your own. And you have to be very sensitive how you go about your business and know your boundaries. If somebody's getting upset, even if it's for something simple as you doing your job in a generic crime scene, you walk away. You're not in the United States, and the killing of Carlos illustrates that very, very well.
Yeah, and I think that's, I've actually worked for agencies down here that say you are not to cross the border for any reason whatsoever on company time. And that is the concern, that it is just so unpredictable. There are some news outlets that allow it, obviously. But that's a very good point, that, just something that could be simple here on this side of the Rio Grande, whether it's, just covering a perp walk, as they call it, of someone walking out of the county courthouse over there, it's a completely different situation.
Yes, because of the impunity, you cannot expect to reason with people. You might stop and try to reason with someone, hey, I'm just doing my job, and you might end up like Carlos.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on this, Julian. We appreciate it. But please stick around, because we're going to bring you back in just a little bit to talk about a new data center project that's opening up in New Mexico near the border, and we'll talk about that when we come back. So stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Data centers. You may not know what they are, but we use them every single day and may not even know about it. Anytime you click on this thing, it's calling that information from a data center somewhere on planet Earth. Well, a lot of folks may not like them, but a lot of cities and municipalities love them because of the economic impact they can bring to the local area. Well, there is a new one going up in New Mexico, and we're bringing in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, right now to tell us a little bit more about what's being called Project Jupiter. Julian?
It's called Project Jupiter, and the name is really fitting because it's a gigantic project. Cluster of data centers going up in the desert of New Mexico, just west of El Paso, Texas. And they have been controversial because of some lawsuits that have been filed by environmentalists and concerned citizens in New Mexico. They're questioning the impact when it comes to water and when it comes to the use of electricity. These data centers, which will be powered by massive amounts of electricity, they're going to generate their own electricity. That's their proposal. But some local groups want to know the specifics about that. They protested the green lighting of the construction at the Doña Ana County Commission. However, there's two sides to this story. And what we're hearing right now is that this project is already being a catalyst for development. There on your screen, you see an aerial shot that I took of the site. Obviously, we have restricted access to it. So we were fortunate enough to go up in a small airplane and take a video of the site. As you see, it's massive. That's the entrance to the grounds. You see the Franklin Mountains of El Paso in the background, and you see the desert where the trucks are already going in to do some work. So the story is that there's already a lot of new home building in anticipation of this project, which is going to generate 750 high-paying permanent jobs. and has already generated thousands of construction jobs. The trucks are coming in day and night. I spoke to one of the promoters of this project. His name is Jerry Pacheco, the Border Industrial Association. He has been the catalyst for a lot of development in what was just desert out there in New Mexico. We talked to him about what he's seen in recent days. I hope we can play what he had to say.
It's an army out there. I took a picture of a shift change with all the graders and, what have you, the equipment. It looked like an army was lined up there. It's an amazing project.
What about the timeline? Where are we standing on the timeline?
They hope to be done in 26 months, which is very ambitious because you're not only building the data centers, they're also building their own microgrid to supply themselves with electricity. And then they would have to build a natural gas plant to power the microgrid. So there's a lot of moving components, but they are not wasting time. One of the first things they did was they put up lights so they could work at night 24/7.
So there you have it, Rudy. We have some lawsuits that were filed, but the project is moving so fast that we might have a case in which there might be a resolution and the thing is already have built. The work that is going on right now is what they call grading, which is leveling the ground. But also, Mr. Pacheco tells me that he had access recently to the site, and there's already some concrete foundations being laid down. And these are massive slabs of concrete to accommodate a lot of wiring, a lot of underground wiring, electrical wiring that will need to go in, as well as obviously drainage and all types of plumbing that needs to go there. Now, the second part of this is the economic impact on the local population. In addition to those construction jobs, there's like a travel center nearby in Santa Teresa at the edge of the desert on the highway, and that center is like busy 24/7. Obviously, employees, they take their break from construction, they go in there and consume. And what Mr. Pacheco says is that in addition to that, all that housing that's being built is probably going to be filling up pretty soon. As soon as the project is completed, the engineers, the supervisors, the technicians come in and settle down close to the place that they work. There's also a gigantic financial impact to the state of New Mexico in general, because this project, believe it or not, its cost is going to be around $165 billion over the next 30 years. A lot of it has to do not so much with the construction, with the buildings, but with the components. To operate a data center, an artificial intelligence data center, you need very expensive computer chips. They're not your ordinary postage stamp size chips. They're really big, and they're very costly, and they wear out, especially with all the demand for information being generated worldwide. So those chips are going to be replaced very often, and that's part of the cost of this project.
You mentioned some environmental lawsuits. I know earlier this week here in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, there was a couple different city commission meetings happen because there have been rumors of data centers popping up here. We have spaces similar to the one you have there in New Mexico that are kind of just desolate areas, almost begging for some development to happen. But what we saw was a lot of local residents concerned, speaking out at these meetings despite nothing being on the city commission agenda, just over those rumors. And the biggest problem biggest concern that they had most often was the lack of available water. I mean, we've talked about water issues here for a very long time on Border Report Live. You've covered these issues for many years. Is there any concern over the amount of water that would be used up towards your neck of the woods?
That is one of the principal concerns, the amount of water that these data centers are going to need to cool down, so to speak. The explanation of the developers, which was good enough to convince the local authorities to greenlight the project, is that they're going to be recycling much of that water. Still, give or take, if you give me a minute, I'll give you some numbers. We're talking about thousands of daily gallons a day that are going to be used and consumed. And to your point, I think this here in New Mexico was very, very sudden, very, very. I don't want to say stealthy, but it happened very quickly. There were some gatherings, some meetings, but as you heard Mr. Pacheco tell us today, the construction is proceeding at a very accelerated rate, so much so that in about 2 years, it might be up and running, operating. There you see again on the screen how massive this construction is going to be.
Yeah,
massive. Look at the freeway.
Yeah, that's a huge, huge plot of land that they're going to be using for that center. You mentioned that kind of truck stop that's there near that area, seeing a lot of folks, going in, spending some cold, hard cash, buying lunch, snacks, whatever it may be, getting ready for the day. Are any other local business owners kind of welcoming this project?
The area is mostly a desert. Mm-hmm. However, yeah, we very recently had that. It's a Love's Travel Center, and there's small stores. There's a Family Dollar. There's some convenience stores. The expectation is that this is going to be the catalyst mm-hmm. for major developments, such as maybe retail once those new homes are built and occupied. Because right now, all the people from Santa Teresa, which is not a very big community, most of them do their shopping in West El Paso. They cross the state line, they go to El Paso. So what they're envisioning is the possibility of a big-time shopping center maybe popping down the road once this highly paid jobs are occupied and people start spending real money down there. Also, with all that movement, it also can be a catalyst for other types of development, such as government development. I know that Santa Teresa for a long time has been pushing for an expanded border crossing. So this might also help with that argument as far as federal and state funding. The border crossing, as Mr. Pacheco points out, is probably only going to grow because in El Paso, one of our commercial border crossings is very likely going to shut down for good because of environmental concerns from neighbors. Mm-hmm. So those trucks that right now would come into the U.S. through South Central El Paso, we have to go way to the east or to Santa Teresa, just on the road across the state line.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on this, Julian. We appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be having a similar discussion in the near future once these data centers start popping up down here in South Texas as well. So we'll call on you for that, definitely, when that time comes. All righty. Thank you, sir. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Got a few more headlines to tell you about, starting with the Rio Grande Valley has a new Border Patrol sector chief in South Texas. Jared Ashby has been on the job for 2 weeks. He was with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem on Wednesday as she toured the border near Brownsville, Texas. That included a roundtable discussion with ranchers and local law enforcement. Ashby thanked Noem for the job and praised the Trump administration's policy against catch and release of those entering the country illegally.
Thank you for the opportunity to lead the men and women here in the RGV sector. This is my second week on the ground, so thank you. During the last administration, effectively 3,300 agents here were muted. They weren't able to do the job. They were relegated to desk and offices processing illegal aliens into this country.
Now, Ashby previously was in the Border Patrol's Ajo sector of western Arizona. You may remember Gloria Chavez stepped down as chief of the RGV sector back in August. Arizona is one of 2 states defending their decision to refuse a request from the U.S. Justice Department to turn over detailed voter information. The department's Civil Rights Division announced the lawsuits on Tuesday, bringing to 23 the number of states it is suing to obtain the data. Connecticut is also suing the DOJ. Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes says releasing the information would violate both state and federal law. Connecticut's Attorney General says the state had tried to work with the DOJ to understand the basis for its request, which includes names, dates of birth, residential addresses, driver's license numbers, and partial social security numbers. Really quick, before we go, we wanted to tell you to check out our friends at Political Power Ranker. It's a show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. Nextstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on data. This week's episode is focused on the governor and Senate race happening in Illinois. Next week, they're bringing it on down here to Texas. So make sure to check out more. You can find more on Political Power Ranker at abc27.com or your local Nextstar station's website. That's going to do it for us today. For Julian Resendiz in El Paso, my name is Rudy Mireles in Harlingen. We'll see you next time.